Okay, today's lesson is 2.4, estimate products. The essential question is, how can you estimate products by rounding and determine if exact answers are reasonable? Now, you children, I hope you're looking in your books and following along the reading. I know it's kind of hard to read up here, but if you're following along on your page, even if you can't see the video clearly, you should probably be able to figure out what's going on, because what I'm reading is what you need to be reading, and I'm going in order of the page from the top to the bottom. Okay, right now here on Unlock the Problem, it says, an elephant can reach as high as 23 feet with its trunk. It uses its trunk to pick up objects that weigh up to 3 times as much as a 165-pound person. Whew, that's heavier than me, by the way. About how much weight can an African elephant pick up with its trunk? Okay, now first couple things we got to do is, if you look at this blue box, it gives you the tips that you need. Okay, tip number 1, cross out the information you don't need. Okay, or you will not use. Sorry, I say you don't need it. If you're not going to use it, do you need it? No. Okay, so let's see here. Do I need to know about? I don't need to know about 23 high trunk. I need to know that it is 3 times as much as it weighs, right? Oh, circle the numbers that you will use. I'm not going to use 23. They're going to try and trick you or throw all those numbers in there. So when 23 shows up and you read it and it's not part of 3 times in the weight, it's just another fact. It's a really neat fact. I like the fact, but that's not what we need, okay? Now, next part. How we use numbers to solve the problem. Well, what we're going to do, obviously, we're going to estimate for products. Products are an answer to a multiplication sentence. So you're going to multiply them. This may not be exactly what the book's telling you to do, but that's what your teacher's telling you to do. You're going to have to multiply those numbers. Now, since we are rounding, what we do, as we've been doing in rounding, is I'd like you to take step 1, round to the greatest factor. That's one way. Rounding to the greatest factor is a really good way to get this stuff done. Now what I would do, 3 times 165. Well, you look at the greatest value. The greatest factor is what they're calling it. The greatest digit's a 1. So 16. 1 and 6, that 1. Well, the 6 is bigger, 5 or greater, so it's going to get rounded up to 2. So then you have 3 times 200. Now, in mental math, we're thinking 3 times 200 or 3 times 200s. Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and then you add the hundreds part up there so you know that it's worth 600. Because 600 is the same thing as 600s, okay? Now, so an African elephant can pick up about 600 pounds with his trunk. Now, when we talked about estimating answers, you can't give me a definite answer. It's like when you're if you ask me, how much do I weigh? I could say, oh, about 210 pounds. Now, hey, I know you guys are making those faces. Don't do it. But it's not an exact answer, is it? I did not just stand on a scale. So, what you guys need to do is always make sure you write about, okay? It's kind of like when your parents ask you if your room's clean. You estimate how good you need to say it is, right? Kinda doesn't mean it's really clean, does it? No. When they say, can I come and check it, that's kind of an exact answer, yes or no. All right. Because I can tell by your work how some of you clean. You won't want your mama checking in the room. Oh, yeah, there we go. Now, another way to do this, and I mean, there's no wrong way. Your parents are going to listen to me and think I'm crazy, and maybe they used a different way that works better for them. So don't be afraid to use your own way. Okay? Estimate by finding 2 numbers the exact answer is between. So, if I have my 165 here times 3, it is okay to go ahead and round down. So, 3 times 100 equals 300. But then I also rounded up, right? 3 times 200 we found out was 600. So, you got to think, 165 is between 100 and 200, right? Because the 1 stays there, but you either go to 100 or you go to 200. If you multiply by both, the African elephant can pick up between 300 and 600 pounds, okay? Now, if you're really dying to know the exact answer, we can go 165 times 3. I can show you real quick. Okay? It's going to be 495 pounds would be the exact answer right there, okay? Now, that's only 5 away from 500, so 600, it's about 600 pounds. But between 300 and 600, that's a good answer too. Is 200 less than or greater than 165? I'm sure you just said greater. And if you didn't, we can talk later about what is greater. So would the product of 3 and 165 be less than or greater than 600? Well, I just showed you the answer, but you could think of it. If whatever you round to, if you have to round one of the factors up, then you know that the actual answer, the real answer, is going to be a little less because you had to round up. Okay? Ask your parents about this. Your parents, a lot of adults, some teenagers even, we round up when we go buying something at the store. If something's $2.89, we just maybe in our heads go, oh, that's $3. Does that make sense? That way we always have enough money. So, is 3 times 165 greater than or less than 3 times 200? I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's going to be less than. Now, Math Talk tells us, is 300 the exact answer closer to 300 or 600? I'm sorry, is the exact answer closer to 300 or 600? Well, we did the math. And you at home, if you do these, you can also just use a calculator maybe when you're at home. Have your mom or dad help you. Use their phone, use the computer, use the iPad. There's everything out there. And why? Well, obviously here with 495, we can kind of tell. Well, 495 is closer to 600. We kind of know it with common sense. Okay, go ahead and flip your page over so we can move on. And I will just go to the next page if I can ever find it. There it is. Okay. Scroll back up here. Describe reasonableness. Okay? And it's really hard to describe reasonableness, not because of the content, but because it's your opinion. My job as a teacher and your parents' job is to give you the right opinion, okay? Okay, Mr. Fox is the greatest teacher that's ever been made and invented by God in the world. That's reasonable. No. But fish stores. I caught a fish this big. Bigger than the screen. I can't even show it to you on the internet because it's so big. Really, I probably caught one this big. But, you know, sometimes we'd be unreasonable, right? You guys ever unreasonable? This ride is taking forever. Well, if it took forever, we'd still be going. Right? Are we driving 1,000,000 miles? Well, if you drove 1,000,000 miles, you'd be in the ocean. Right? Unless you went in a lot of circle and squiggly lines. Okay? So, make sure you guys understand reasonableness. It means you can estimate a product to find whether an exact answer is reasonable. Okay? Let's find out. Look, pretty horse, by the way. Tell whether an exact answer is reasonable. Eva's horse eats 86 pounds each week. Now, if I'm you, just from the last one, I go ahead and just underline that. Eva solves the equation below to how much feed she needs for 4 weeks. 4 times 86. Now, Eva says she needs 344 pounds of feed. Is her answer reasonable? Well, let's use our one way to estimate. Our first one way to estimate is what? Round to the nearest 10. What is that going to be? 86, our nearest 10 is actually going to be, well, there's a 6 beside it. If it's 5 or up, you round this number up, so it's actually going to be 90. So 4 times 90, or you think 9 tens, which 4 times 9 is 36, or 36 tens, so you add a 0 on there because the tens makes you add a 0. 344 is close to 360. So I think her exact answer is reasonable. In fact, I might go ahead and just get 360 depending on the bags. Most bags of feed you're going to have to buy at a certain weight anyway. They're not going to give you, you can't really call in, I don't believe, and say, hey, I need 300, 60 pounds of feed. They'll probably say we come in 50-pound bags. So if she bought, if they come in 50-pound bags, 50, 100, 150, 200, you know, what weight is she probably going to settle at? She needs more than 344, so probably 350, okay? So let's look at another way. Find the two numbers between, it's supposed to be between, okay? So, 4 times 86, well, what? I always have to think of what I would round 86 down to. I've already rounded it up, but, okay, so I went up to 90. Well, now I need to think, well, what would it be between? 86 is between 80 and 90, so 4 times 80 is 320. That's 32 tens. 4 times 8 tens, 32 tens, or 320. 4 times 86, but we're rounded up to 90, is 300 and, that's right, 360. Okay, or 36 tens. You got to be careful with your zeros like I am not. Make sure that don't look like a 6, because that'd be kind of an odd answer. Now, once I have this answer, okay, and this is what I'm looking at my page. If we scroll down a little bit, it's going to show you, because I know you have it on your page too. Mine are going to disappear, though, here in a second when I do this. So, what you need to be writing on your page now is 344 is between, I hope you're writing this, 344 is between 320 and 360. Okay? Find two numbers. The exact answer is in between. Okay? So, they're still saying 4 times 86 equals 344. Okay? So 344 pounds of feed is reasonable. Do you understand why it's reasonable? We checked it two ways. One, when we round up or down the closest place we needed to round, it worked. The second way is we found the low and the high of what we would have rounded that number to begin with, and the number she picked was in between there, so it seems reasonable, okay? All right. It's just making sure you can do it. Makes sense in your mind, okay? Buying a horse while you live in town may not be reasonable if you don't have a place to put it. But let's say you live in the country and you'll use the horse, and you might want to show it. You might want to barrel race. And you have a stable and you have a place to get feed. All of a sudden, that's reasonable. Okay? Reasonable things work out most of the time. All right. Now we're going to do share and show on the bottom. I'm going to bring it up as much as I can here real quick. If it will let me. Come on now. There we go. Okay, share and show. I almost say it's like I'm saying share and show, but no, it's share and show. Estimate the products by rounding. Well, it's always going to be 5. 5 times 2,213. Well, and you have the same one on your page, number 1 under share and show. Well, what I would do is I have to round that 2. Well, the second number is a 2. So instead of going up to 3, I just keep it at 2,000. So it'd be 5 times 2,000. Or 2,000s. If I think of it 2,000s and 5 times 2 is 10, comma for the thousands. Make sure you always put that comma in there and have 3 zeros with 3 digits, 3 spaces after it, or otherwise it doesn't. It's not 1,000. You have the comma in the wrong place. People get mixed up with the numbers. Now, estimate the product when finding the numbers. The two numbers, the exact answer is going to be in between. So, I can start with my low one, 5 times 2,000, which is 10,000 we just talked about. Or I can go ahead and take 2,000 and round up. And if that's a 2, what is up is 3,000. You've got to remember, when you're rounding and you're doing the greatest place, everything after it's a 0. So it either stays a 2 and is a 0, or you go up to a 3. The digit that's here never goes lower. It's never going to be a 1. It's never going to be a 0. It's always going to be a 2, or it can go up to a 3. So 5 times 3,000, or 3,000s. 5 times 3,000s is 15,000. So your exact answer is going to be between 10,000 and 15,000. Okay? That's what they're wanting you to know. All right, now, is the exact answer of 11,065 reasonable? Is that a reasonable answer? Yes, it is, because it's in between these and it's a little bit above this. Now, when you took it and you just got 10,000, you might be like, well, that's 1,000 off. Well, if you find the two numbers when you estimate that it would be right in between, all of a sudden it doesn't seem so bad. You go, oh, it's in between there. It fits in there, so it's okay. All right? All right, let's go ahead and go on to the next page. I think I might start using my magic marker up here so that I don't keep unclicking things. I'll just erase them if I need to. Okay, now what we're going to do is a couple scenarios, and you can even ask your parents to help you with this, or show them. If you can teach them what to do, you know what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. Figure it out. Get it going here. Get your name on your paper, all that stuff like that. How you doing? Just waiting on the kids. They'll be done in a second. Okay, here we go. Kira needs to make color copies of a horse show flyer. Now, I know a lot of you can't see this. I'm pretty sure it's going to be hard to read on the internet, all over the computer, but you have it on your page, which is the most important thing. You should just follow along to reading. I'm on number 3. So I'm going to start over. Kira needs to make color copies of a horse show flyer. The printer can make 24 copies in 1 minute. Kira says the printer makes 114 copies in 6 minutes. Is she reasonable? Well, over here on the space of my page, which it looks just like yours, I'm going to do a little bit of math. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 24 times 6. But 6 times 24, I need to round 24 up or down. Well, honestly, 6 times 24. Well, it's 24, so the first thing I need to do is I need to find whether it's reasonable. And I really think the best way for you guys even is to do the high and the low and make sure whatever they said is in between. Because that way, you're not guessing on yourself, okay? So, if I take 24 and I round it down, it's 20. Well, 6 times 2 tens is 12 tens, or 120. Okay? And so if I round 24 up, it doesn't go to 25. Okay? I'm only worried about the tens spot. Well, the only thing a 2 can go to if you round up is a 3. Okay? So that gives me 30. 6 times 30, which equals 6 times 3 tens equals, good job, 18 tens, or 180. Now the number is 114. Okay, is her answer reasonable?
Yes.
No. No. And why is it not reasonable? Well, I mean, I guess it can make 114 copies in 6 minutes, but actually, if you look at it, it can make a lot more than 114 copies in 6 minutes, can't it? I mean, if we round down, it still beats it, doesn't it? Okay? That's what I'm talking about. So, is what she's saying reasonable because it's close and we're more, or is it not reasonable?
No.
Even though if that's what we had to do, if we had to make 114 in 6 minutes, we'd be fine, wouldn't we? But her saying that is not reasonable. Why? No. Is it reasonable? No. And I would write because 114 is not between 120, and then I'd put and. I'd write 120 and 180. That way everyone knows what numbers you're going between, okay? I hope that makes sense. If she said it'd make 124 copies in 6 minutes, she would have been right, but her answer's not reasonable because it would make more. It wouldn't make less, and it's not in between our even low estimate, okay? So it didn't fit. That was a good reason to do both estimates that time. Okay, let's read number 4. Jones Elementary is having a car wash to raise money for a community horse trail. Each car wash ticket costs $8. Tara says the school will receive $1,000 if 125 tickets are sold. Okay, so we have $8 tickets. We're thinking we're going to get to 125 if they're sold, so we need to sell to get $1,000. So $1,000 is what we're thinking, okay? Well, right now you're thinking 1,000. Well, 1,000 is our number. We need to know if it's reasonable. So what we're going to do off to the side again, okay? Make sure we can see me up here. I'll just do it on top on this one. And I know you don't have quite as much room on your paper, but honestly, when we're estimating and we're rounding and we're seeing the estimate of the numbers, it's supposed to be a little bit of writing and not a lot, because it's supposed to be a little bit in your head, because it's supposed to make life easier. I'm not teaching you rounding to make it harder. It's to make it a little easier, right? Your parents do it all the time. How long is it going to take me there? About an hour. They don't say 59 minutes and 36 seconds. We'll be there, right? And especially in Kansas, that wind's going to blow you over, slow you down. Okay? So, I've got 8 times 125. But I've got to round it down first to 100. Well, 8 times 100, or 8 times 100s is going to be, 800. Very good. Okay? Well, I can also round 125 up to 200. Because remember, it's 125. Okay? So I'll show you right here, 125. Okay, it's a 2 right here, so I would stay at the 1. But since we're trying to make sure the estimate's between two different numbers, I have to round up to 200. Because a 1 would go up to 2, rounded up. And 8 times 200s is 1600s, or 1,600s, or also known as 1600 or 1,600. Now, is the 1,000 between both those? Yes, it is. Yes. And when they ask you why, because don't they always ask why? Tell whether the exact answer is reasonable. Okay? Yes. Once again, you're going to write because. Make sure you use $sign. 1,000 is between, I wrote 100, I fixed it, everyone makes mistakes, is between 800 and 1,600. Remember, 1,600 is also 1,600. Okay? That's why it works, because it is actually in between both of those. Okay? Now, I hope you can rewind it and watch this if you need to, but I'm going to move on just a little bit. I'm really hoping you're starting to get a lot of these answers on your own, because I don't think you need to copy all mine. I know it takes a little bit of confidence to do that, but you know that the homework assignment is going to be on your own. So just go ahead and pay attention with what I'm doing, but don't just copy. Make sure you are paying attention. Okay. Mrs. Hensey sells a roll of coastal Bermuda horse hay for $58. Or dollars, not really actual bucks. Although it is hunting season. She says she will make $174 if she sells 3 rolls. Okay. So her estimate is $174. What I would do if I were you guys is put a box around the estimate so you don't accidentally multiply it. You know what I mean? I don't want you guys to go, oh, this is the number just because it's big. Usually the biggest number we find is the one we're trying to see if we can meet. Okay? So once again, I'll take 58 and 3. Well, 58, I could round down. And when I round down, I look at 58. I don't go 48. You got to be careful. You look at the 5. When I round down, that just means I stay with the 5 and make everything else a 0. So 3 times 50, or 3 times 5 10 is 15 tens, which is also known as 150. Okay, and then I also take 3 times, 58 honestly would round up to 60. 3 times 6 tens is 18, or 180. 18 tens or 180, sorry. So is 174, is that a reasonable answer? 2. What? If you said yes, you are correct. And so I would write yes, and then they're going to say, tell me why. Once again, because, and I hope you guys know how to do this on your own by now, 174, it's going to be the same thing all the time, even if it's a no, is between, if it wasn't, you'd say not between, is between 150 and $180. It's really neat when you do these in-between ones, because it just, I mean, you could be, when you estimate just to round it up or down, you could be close and you'd say that'll work just fine. But when you find the low and the high, you know, if it's in between them, you know it's exactly right, okay? All right. Oh, wait a second. Some of you probably still writing. Let me look at the book and make sure I'm doing it right. Hey, we were right. Just letting you know. Okay. Mr. Brown sells horse supplies. A pair of riding gloves sells for $16. He says he will make $144 if he sells 9 pairs. Okay, now we need to get to our estimate or exact answer that somebody said. So what we're going to do is figure out which one it is. Well, $16 for 9 pairs. 144 is our biggest number. Obviously, that's the number we're trying to round to. So we're going to circle that. Okay, now I have 9 pairs times 16. Well, if I round 16 down, well, the greatest place has a 1 in it. So instead of that 1 can't be changed, so I just make that 1. It's 2 digits, so I make it a 1 and a 0. I make it 10. Well, 9 times 10, since we know our tens, we know that's 90, okay? All right, and then so I take 9 times, well, 16. Honestly, if I rounded it up, if you look at 16 and you go to the right, it's a 6. And so I go up to 20, which would be 180. So, is 144 in between 90 and 180?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay. Is it reasonable? Yes. And you need to write. And I know you're probably all saying it with me or you're already starting to write. Yes, because $144 is between $90 and $180. Now, I know that leaves a lot of area to be between, but at least the exact answer they found is in between 2 estimates. And one estimate's always going to be probably a little farther off than the other one, like close-wise. But as long as the exact answer is in between them, that means that estimate is, it means it's reasonable. As long as you do the estimating right. And that's just rounding up and rounding down. When we round down, we don't move the number down. We just make everything after it a 0. We stay at that number. Okay? If it's 56 and we round down, we don't go to 46. We just take the 5 at 50 and leave it there and just make the 6 a 0. That's what rounding down is. Okay. Hope you all got that. If you need to rewind, you can. All right, number 7. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down just a little more if I can. Okay. Number 7. And number 7, I'm going to try and blow up a little bit. I won't always be able to do this, but maybe you'll even be able to read it on the internet if I blow it up like this. Okay. Hey, you kind of can. All right. A walking path for horses is 94 feet long. Carlos says that if a horse walks the length of the path 3 times, he will have walked 500 feet. So the answer he says is an exact answer is the 500 feet, because it's the longest answer, okay? So we're taking 3 times 94. Well, you've probably already guessed it. We're going to take 3 times 90. And it should be easy when you're doing it at least by 2-digit numbers, because 85, well, you just stop at 80. You don't say the rest of it. That's when you round down. I mean, think about it. If it's 67, you got to go down. You just go 3 times 60. Drop off the 7, okay? So 3 times 94 would just be 3 times 90. Don't say the last digit because you went down. 3 times 90, okay? Well, 3 times 9 is 27. So 3 times 9 tens is 27 tens, or 270. Okay? Now 94 rounded up, oh boy, would be 3 times, that's right, it's a 9. And if you round a 9 up, you go to the next place, which would be a 10. Okay, so 3 times 10 tens, well, you guys know what 10 tens is, don't you? That's 100. That equals 300. So, if that horse walks it 5 times, is this 500 feet, is that reasonable? I hope you said no, because unless we add these, which we wouldn't do ever, we're a little off. So you need to put no. And then I hope you're right in cursive. 500 feet, and I just put FT, is not between 270 feet and 300 feet. Now, if somebody asked you why more, I hope you've been paying attention enough. You'd be like, well, I estimated the lowest it could be and the highest it could be by rounding, and the number's not in between it. So obviously it's unreasonable. Does that make sense to you guys? I really hope it does. All right, now I'm going to come over to your computer. I'm going to put on the next one. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I meant scroll over. I'm going to have to unblow it up, I guess. So I hope you got down the best you can. For those of you watching this at home or later in a different class, my actual classroom class is here, and they're being amazing, like so amazing that you couldn't tell they were here, which is great. I like them. I'm glad they're here, but it's really hard to get a 4th grade class to be quiet, and since they're quiet, I'm pretty proud of them right now. Okay? Now, which shows the two estimates? The exact answer is in between. Well, that's pretty easy. If you look up here, we've got 4. So 3, it can go down to a what? Well, it's the same thing as saying like 389. You just say 300, you stop because that's what it is. So 4 times 300. Well, 4 times 3 is 12. Then you add the 100 on there, or 1,200. 389, well, it's a 3, so it can, if it goes up, it's only going to go up to a 4. So 4 times 400, or 400s, well, 4 times 4 is 16, and the 100 on hundreds, 1,600. Okay, so do we have a 12, 1,200, and a 1,600? Yeah, right here. If we would have done this and not found our answer here, we would have done something wrong, and we need to go back and reevaluate what we did. Okay, thank you very, very much. This is where I'm going to stop at for a little bit. That's the second page for you guys, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.